For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated. More often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the E.T. Stand Podcast. Welcome to the E.T. Stand Podcast and simulcast, actually, in many ways. We've got Stormy Daniel, the co-host of the Stormcast Podcast as well, joining us. G'day, mate. How you doing?
Good, thank you, Boulder. How are you, mate?
Mate, very well. I'm going to do this to you anyway. We normally do this at the start of any of our podcasts. We often play the up Cronulla music. So I'm just going to make your listeners, if you decide to broadcast the start, you might also cut this off if it goes onto your channel as well. I'm sure you'll enjoy listening to the lovely hymn of up Cronulla, mate. No
yes,
comment.
I'm very au fait with it. No, I'm very au fait with it. My auntie is a tragic Sharks fan.
Shout out to your auntie.
And
What's
my
your
best
auntie's
friend
name?
Jack, Christine, Auntie Chris.
Auntie Christine. Hopefully the Sharks can get up for you on the weekend.
Yep. And my best friend Jack, who will be listening. She's an avid listener of the ET podcast. So
how good.
ET. Yep. So she's
ET Stand Podcast.
She's
How
a
good.
diehard tragic. Yep.
Well, there's a lot of diehard tragics around. It's a lot of fun having the opposition fan previews on, isn't it? It's look, we were meant to start recording this 25 minutes ago, but Daniel and I have just been chatting all things rugby league and Magpies and Kevin McGuinness and 20 points to 12 in the 1996 semi-final that knocked out the Magpies and reliving all that sort of stuff. It is terrific time, just reliving all that stuff. But it's this weekend, the Cronulla Sharks welcome the third-placed Melbourne Storm and four-time premiership winners and title favourites. And they are title favourites for good reason, with last start 64-0 winners over the West Tigers. Goodness me, your post-show last week talking through all the tries must have been your longest podcast ever, Daniel.
It was one to much more enjoyable to record after a win, and especially by that magnitude. So they were hot to trot, and I don't think it would have mattered who was in front of them that day. They were always in a mood, and they were always going to put on a score like that. So unfortunately, it had to be West.
Yeah, well, that was coming off the back of the Raiders' loss, and so I've got in my notes here. I was going to ask you, it was a penalty, wasn't it? Was the question I was going to ask you. But actually, there are a couple of moments in that match where I could say to you it wasn't a penalty or not, and you might be a little bit bitter. You're a bit unlucky against the Raiders, weren't you?
A few people have said that. Look, I have I suppose, something that I always ensure that I don't delve into is I never point the finger at the officialdom. And the reason why I say that is because I subscribe to the theory that you've got 80 minutes during a game of football. And during those 80 minutes of football, you've got moments. And moments can influence a result. And if you're putting it down to one or two refereeing decisions, what about the knock-ons? What about the offsides? What about the missed tackles? What about the ill discipline? No one wants to talk about that, do they? So I never actually point to the referees or the bunker or anything like that, because we're talking about one moment or two moments here. But what about the other 80 minutes where your players were ill-disciplined or didn't push up or weren't there, didn't get into position, etc. So again, I don't subscribe to that, and even you can go back and listen to other episodes that I've recorded when I get listener questions coming in, calling the officials incompetent and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, guys, you got to look at what you can control within games, and obviously errors and discipline are two of the things that the Storm could control. So the Storm don't lose games through traditionally by beating themselves, but against the Raiders, they did beat themselves.
I was going to ask you that. Why do the Storm typically lose? And maybe there's more to be learnt out of the. Oh, look, I do think you're a little bit unlucky with the referees, but as a Storm fan, you would say we don't talk or blame the referees because you had your own referee in Cameron Smith for so many years, and so therefore it's not something you've ever had to worry about. And also, this is another joke that I make when talking to them. There's a hierarchy, Daniel, in terms of how much favour your team gets from the referees. And I can tell you, talking to the West Tigers and the Cowboys fans, they're convinced that they're at the bottom of the hierarchy. And the Roosters and some other teams are at the top of the hierarchy. It is a lot of fun to talk about, but you are right, I think. You can't go blaming the referees. However, sometimes in these matches, the margins of these victories, like it can be enormously close. And as I think about, and obviously we've got you as a Melbourne Storm podcaster on, it would be amiss of me not to talk about the greatest rugby league match of all time, the 2016 grand final, which was 14-12 to the Sharkies. And if you play that 10 times, the Sharks win 5 and the Storm win 5. And the margin in that match is as fine as you can.
You're breaking up there. Can't hear a thing.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about it. But you would agree with me on that point. The margins in these matches can be very, very finite. Yeah. And that was the perfect example. I always say it, if Billy Slater's not injured and he's playing in that team and you've got Billy Slater at fullback and Cameron Munster at 5'8" instead, when the Storm's charging against the Sharks right at the death, you're just a little bit faster and I think you really score. So what are your memories of the 2016 grand final, mate? I'll force you to talk about it. Come on.
68th minute, Christian Welsh giving a penalty away for unnecessary swinging arm on Chad Townsend.
Yeah, as a big moment, wasn't it? And then the Fafita goes.
Led to
or straight away though.
Led to Fafita. Pardon?
We didn't score straight away after that though, did we? We had a bit of. Was that the set?
That was the set. It's burned into my memory.
Yeah, that's right. It was because, Fafita scores, in the 68th minute or something, wasn't it? I thought Fafita scored in the 72nd minute. What happened? Yeah, right. So you were obviously in the crowd.
Yep,
Jeez,
that
one does burn deep for you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, you've got those other times. You won the next year.
Yeah.
You won the next year. All right, well, let's talk.
Thankfully.
All right, well, let's talk about the Storm this season. Geez, you've had a terrific record this season. So other than that match against the Raiders, you really only dropped matches against the Dragons and the Dolphins. So I guess it's
the Dolphins.
Yeah, I guess that's the question of how do teams beat the Storm, mate, when they happen to get past you? Because you so infrequently lose.
Yeah, it's one thing that I suppose has been within the DNA of the Storm right across the tenure of obviously the Craig Bellamy era, which is 23 years and going strong, is that they've always based their game on defence and been ruthless with their defence. And even though probably since the Big Three had retired, they're now probably more seen as an attacking team as opposed to a defensive team. And that's probably an evolution of where the players are at, the way, the style of play, the overall, I suppose, makeup of the entire list is that they are just compared to previous years where they didn't have the attacking flair and personnel that they've got now within their ranks. You go back to those lean years. When I say lean, I mean years that they didn't win the comp during that period of 06 to 2009, 2012 to 2016, etc. The years that they didn't feature in grand finals and whatnot, they probably lacked the attack, but they had the defence. Now all of a sudden, they're probably skewed one way in terms of being a very, very strong attacking team. And obviously that comes down to their 1, 6, 7, and 9, which many consider the best spine in the competition.
They're definitely the best. They're definitely the best spine in the competition.
And when you've got role players like Anderson and Meaney and Warbrick and co your Bronson Garlicks of the world, your Alec McDonalds, who are unheralded. They're unheralded. They're not big names, etc. But they come in and they do a role. They actually complement. They complement the attacking prowess and flair. So they've got a real good mix and blend at the moment. And I think it goes back to that point where when they're on, and if they've got their full best 17 available to them, you can't beat them. But it goes back to that point, what you were talking about before. Yeah, and it goes back to that point where you were talking about before, about why did they lose to the Raiders? Well, they beat themselves. So they don't. When they don't beat themselves, you're not gonna win. And how did they beat themselves? By losing their heads and putting on pumpkins like they did against the Raiders, where they took the bait. Yeah, they took the bait and they paid the price for it in regards to their ill discipline or lack thereof.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, Daniel. So if you think back to certainly for Sharks fans, if we think back to the last match we had against the Storm, which was the first week finals match, it was a high quality match and the Sharkies got themselves back into it. But the relentless pressure that the Storm put the Sharks under through just mistake-free football, consistent football, and in the end, in that 60th, it's around the 60th minute, the Storm just ended up cutting the Sharks up, and we just ended up putting a couple of points on us. It was closer than the scoreline indicated, but the Storm were clearly the better team on the day. Like, it was noticeable that they were, 2 tries, 3 tries better, maybe not 4 tries better. We've got the team list up here on the left. Daniel, why don't you do us the solid and read through the team list, because I know you'll get all of the pronunciations correct. So run us through the Storm team that's taken on the Sharks at Shark Park at 7:30.
All right, the Storm look like this. Ryan Papenhuyzen, the 4-try hero, is at fullback. Suat Failongo is on the wings with Xavier Coates. Grant Anderson and Nick Meaney are in the centres. In the halves, Cameron Moneyman Munster and Jerome Doozy Hughes, the reigning Daily M medalist. Stefano Uto Ikamanu and Josh King are in the front row with Bronson Garlick named at hooker. I'll come back to that. Sean Bloor and Eli Katoa in the second row. Trent Loiero is at lock. On the interchange bench at this stage, Tyron Wishart is in 14. Alec McDonald, a.k.a. the man they call Chin, is in 15. Tui Kemikamita in 16. And Joe Chan is in 17. Now, interesting to note, in the extended reserves list, there is one Harrison Grant and one Nelson Asafa Solomona, who I do expect to both come into the final 17 come kickoff on Saturday night.
Now, that was one of my big questions. How long has it been since both of those guys have played? How many weeks have they been out?
So Nelson obviously suffered that nasty concussion back in round 3 against the Panthers, involving Nick Meaney, bit of friendly fire, and suffered some post-concussion. Suffered some post-concussion symptoms for a few weeks. So he missed a few games of football. He's been back for 3 weeks now. So he had 2 weeks in the Host Plus Cup for the Storm's feeder team, the Sunshine Coast Falcons. So just to get minutes back into his legs, because he hadn't played since round 3. And obviously he didn't play in round 1 due to the fact that he was still serving a suspension. So he hadn't had a lot of game time. So he played a fortnight of football for the Sunshine Coast Falcons, got some really good minutes, and then returned last week against Wests, where he just completely obliterated their ruck when he did come in. So ridiculous stats, 36 minutes for over 120-odd metres, close to 100 post-contact metres. He was a behemoth. He just completely opened up the ruck. And then if you're a second or third prop carry on the back of that, you're loving life, because your stats look absolutely amazing. Having a hit up on the back of Nelson Solomona, just absolutely skittling the opposition. So,
Sounds like the Sharks
one NRL game back.
Benefit, Daniel. Sounds like with the Sharks benefits with AFB. All right, so he's going to be pretty pumped up. He's done well against the Sharkies too. He's a bit feared in the Sharks ranks. Yeah, certainly the Sharks fans.
Yeah, well, there was that game, might have been 2022, if memory serves me correctly. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I think he was playing. They moved him to a second row, and he was giving Matt Moylan nightmares.
Poor Matt Moylan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's obviously an X factor. I call him the agent of chaos because he causes so much chaos around the ruck where the man I'm about to talk to now really capitalises upon that, which is Harry Grant, who he hasn't played for 4 weeks. They said that he could have played last week with a pinch, but you know as well as I do with hamstring injuries, if it's 100%, give it another week. He makes his return.
Well, we know that the Sharkies fans know the hamstring injury problems from Matt Moylan and Sean Johnson, a whole host of others. Goodness me, the hamstrings can be an absolute nightmare. Hey, Tyron Wishart, talk to me about the role he plays for the Storm off the bench, because the Sharks fans have been talking about the role of Daniel Atkinson off the bench and what he does for us, and is a little bit different to most of the other teams, because most of the other teams are running with a second hooker. I don't think the Sharks need to do that. So talk to us about Tyron Wishart.
I refer to him as the Swiss Army knife. So he's got obviously the utility value there to play at 9, can jump in at 6 and 7 if necessary. His strength is he's a ball runner. So he came through as a 6, coming up through the Illawarra Steelers junior pathways into St. George Illawarra's junior system, and he was primarily a running 6. And then so obviously the Storm saw a lot of value in him as a runner, and like they do, they sprinkle a little bit of dust and they can turn them into something else and manufacture or utilise their skill set in other areas, and that's what they've been able to do. So primarily when he does come on, he does play in the ruck. So he does play as that sort of middle third forward role where he's just basically there to utilise his leg speed because, again, he is a natural ball runner. So when later stages of the game, when you can throw on someone like Wishart, who's got good leg speed, good mobility in and around the ruck, tiring forward packs, etc., again, it gives them a different sort of point of difference on the field in that regard. But he's sometimes he can play longer minutes than usual, but often if Harry Grant has the capacity to play 80 minutes, you'll see Tyron Wishart maybe only get 10, 15 minutes a game, which is unfortunate, but it's just the role that he does play. But if the Storm get out to a bit of a lead and they decide to give Harry Grant a bit of an early mark, then he'll just jump into 9 and play 20, 25 minutes at the ruck. But that's the sort of role that he's there. He's there for, I suppose, risk management, where he can play right across 6, 7, 9, 13. And again, he's I think there was a game there where Xavier Coates had to leave the field, and he was on the wing like his old man, and ended up scoring a try. I think against the Panthers back in round 3. So his
old man could play, couldn't he?
He was one of my favourite Illawarra Steelers players and general players of all time. So, he's got that utility value. As I said, he's the Storm's resident Mr. Fix-It, the Swiss Army knife who can just do a job.
Yeah, I reckon the Sharks can probably learn something from the way that the Storm have set up Tyron Wishart. I don't think we've quite got it right yet, the way that we use Daniel Atkinson. You know, Blake Brayley consistently plays 80 minutes and is an enormously fit player and doesn't need it. But, you wouldn't think that Harry Grant's too far off Blake Brayley's level of fitness, but he's probably not quite as fit, but certainly more skillful. But the Sharks fans, Daniel Atkinson, the attack just seems to stifle, or they're not really sure how to play him. And he is a running player. It came up, as a 5'8" as well. So the Sharkies, Coach Fitzgibbon, I know you occasionally watch this podcast, Coach Fitzgibbon. Go fix up Daniel Atkinson. We've been talking about that for yonks. All right. Now, during the Tuesday night show, I made the joke that I didn't know much about Grant Anderson. And so I said, who are you, Grant Anderson, making a little bit of fun. So, Daniel, tell us about Grant Anderson. What's worth knowing?
Yeah, GA. He's a Newcastle Knights junior, so he hails from the Hunter area. He's been a bit of I suppose his journey has been very interesting to the NRL. So He did play junior reps for the Newcastle Knights, came through the sort of their pathway system, Harold Matthews, SG Boy, etc. Had a bit of a run in their NYC under 20s period at the time, and obviously that was the period of COVID. So you know as well as I do, a lot of the junior rugby league, as well as the junior rep period and lower grades, they didn't play a whole lot of football. And the time that it had resumed, he was just playing local league in the Newcastle competition when his manager got him a gig at the Northern Pride, believe it or not. So all the way up to North Queensland. And from there, there was an opportunity for him to take up a chance at the Sunshine Coast Falcons, where he was tapped by the Storm to come and do a train and trial in the preseason. So he did the infamous IDQ camp, did the Geelong camp, impressed the Storm hierarchy in that regard. So he was given a 1-year contract in 2022 as a part of the top 30 list, but didn't expect to play any NRL football. But then the Storm were going through an injury crisis in 2022, and he was the last man standing. So that's how his debut came about. And ever since he's played across both edges, on the left and the right and the centres, and has done an admirable job. He's also played on the wing and hasn't let anyone down. And Magic Round last year, when Munster went off with his groin injury, he actually jumped into 5'8" for 50 minutes. So he's a real versatile outside back, I suppose you could say. But where is his best position? I think definitely in the centres in that regard. So yeah,
he got some handy wingers though. He's not going to unseat Xavier Coates, I would have thought, or Fire Largo.
No.
You mentioned Munster. If you had asked me who's the out and out elite level player for the Storm, I would say it's Munster. Would you agree with me that he's your top guy?
Yeah. I again, it's as cool and calm and collected as Jerome Hughes is, and as flash as Ryan Papenhuyzen is, and like I'm the number one card holder of the Ryan Pappy fan club. Love him to bits. Yeah, I think when you boil it all down, I think it's Munster's unpredictability is probably the best word to use.
He's been around a while. He played in the 2016 grand final, didn't he, Munster? Yes,
he did.
Yeah,
he
10, 11-year player now. He was fullback. He's been playing for a while. He must be up to 200 games?
Yeah, no, so he's over 200 games. Him and Nelson Asafa-Solomona, they celebrated their 200th game last year.
He'll crack 300, won't he? Maybe even 350.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I definitely think he's on track. Obviously, barring no more injury concerns. But it's funny that you're seeing playmakers like your sixes and your sevens now play even better football when they're over that sort of the age of 30. And he's 30, going on 31 now, and there's probably an argument to say that his best football is actually in front of him as a playmaker, as a half. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does sort of develop and evolve his game. Obviously, Father Time remains undefeated in terms of speed and agility and whatnot. But like we've seen with the great halves of the game, whilst they might lose a yard of pace in speed and prowess on the field, they actually get quicker between the years. So I'm interested to see how he does sort of develop as a scheming, playmaking half in that regard. So, because at the moment his instinctiveness is probably his Achilles heel, and what a lot of people, a lot of teams, they can do all the video work on him to try and nullify his impact in games. But the players like Cameron Munster, it's very, very hard to stop, because you don't know what he's going to do, because he doesn't even know what he's going to do himself. So, and they're the dangers. They're the dangerous players in our game. And Munster is definitely one of those players that, I don't like using the term eyes up, but he's exactly eyes up. He will react to what a defence is doing.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that he's the reason the eyes up footy expression has come into the vernacular, really, because he is certainly the captain of that. All right, now you mentioned your other creative star player. I would actually put Paps in the Origin team at fullback. I think he's the top fullback for New South Wales. Like, other than maybe you could argue the former Will Kennedy, but you're obviously not going to pick Will Kennedy in the Origin team. Paps is just on fire, isn't he? He's just so good. He's like scoring tries everywhere.
Yeah, it's insane. It's and you know what? Like, I made mention to this on my Tuesday night episode where, you know, like, this hasn't happened by luck. You know, he's gone through the ringer in terms of the last couple of years with the horrific injuries that he's had, with the shattered kneecap and the broken ankle, and even last year
Shattered
breaking his lower leg
to
again.
come back from.
Yeah. Oh,
that's a serious injury.
You know. And that X-ray, I don't know if you've seen the photos of the X-ray.
Yeah,
but
I've seen it.
His kneecap was shattered. It was shattered in 10 different pieces. And then you think about it, like, you've got to wait for that to heal, and then you lose all your muscle in your legs, and you've got to rebuild, and you've got to learn to sort of not only walk again, but run again and move and change direction at pace and angles and whatnot. And, you know, that just doesn't happen over a few months. Like, this was almost a 12-month, 13-month injury. And then even when he did get back, he looked very limber. Didn't look like he's accelerating self and whatnot. But I think, you know, all the hard work that he's done behind the scenes, and credit to the Storm medical team as well, that obviously have put a lot of, and performance team that have put a lot of work into him, and he's obviously bought in, and he's worked his backside off to get back to not only playing first grade, but he's back to performing at that elite level before that horrific knee injury. And it's great to see. And look, you won't hear any argument to me to say that he doesn't deserve to be the New South Wales Origin fullback. Personally, as a Queensland fan, I hope they don't pick him. And as a selfish Melbourne Storm fan, I hope they don't pick him as well. But in saying that, look, I'd be absolutely stoked if he did get an opportunity to play Origin football, because he wouldn't let anyone down.
Well, you want your top guys playing Origin football because the experience that they learn, even like, it typically works out for you playing Origin football, unless you're Brett Kimmorley and it's 2005. Typically, it does work out for you. I just think New South Wales should pick him. Like, they picked Dylan Edwards over Tedesco because Dylan Edwards was the form fullback. You can't argue that Papenhuyzen is not the form fullback. So, look, we'll see how that goes. All right, what else is worth knowing about the Storm team, mate, before we switch over to the Sharks team and you can start asking me the questions?
I think I mentioned him before, Alec McDonald, really underrated player. A lot of people sleep on him because he's not well known, probably not well recognised. He's one of those, I suppose, Craig Bellamy toilers, if you like, the type of player that Craig Bellamy is attracted to, because they'll put their head where you wouldn't put your feet, so to speak. And he does a lot of clean-up work. One thing about Alec McDonald is he provides a bit of a point of difference on the interchange bench when he does come on. He's obviously not as big as what your Stefano Utoikamanu are, or your Josh Kings, or your Nelson Asafa Solomonas are, but he's a smaller body, but he's more mobile, and he's got tremendous leg speed, and he always finds his front. So listeners and viewers might be asking, what's he mean by always finds his front? 99 times out of 100, he always falls on his stomach and can get up and generate a quick play the ball. Very often is he put on his back. And for a smaller body, that's very, very impressive. And that just comes back down to his leg speed, because one thing you can't coach is speed. So, and that can be an absolute asset, even as a middle forward. So, he's a vital element and ingredient into this the success of this Storm team, especially their forward pack, in providing that continuous momentum through the middle third.
Sounds very Cameron McInnes, mate.
Yeah,
Cam McInnes. I'm going to steal that expression.
Yeah, please do. Yep.
All right, I'm definitely going to do that. Get that in the vernacular. All right. Well, that was the Storm.
Just make sure you credit me.
Oh, mate, Stormy Daniels. How could we not? We actually look. One of the things we talk, as I mentioned, we talked for half an hour before we got into. One of the subjects we did talk about was the other Stormy Daniels. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google it and you'll work it out pretty quickly. All right, let's get into the Sharks team. I'll run through the Sharks team for you, and then you can fire the questions. So, look, after chatting to Daniel about this Melbourne Storm team, there's a lot of similarities there, but let's go through the Sharkies team to take on the Melbourne Storm at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night at Shark Stadium. William Kennedy, the Daily M leader, is the fullback for the Cronulla Sharks. On the wings, we have Samuel Stone Street filling in for the injured Sione Katoa. We'll talk about Stoney, or the Goat Street. And the much maligned Ronaldo Mulitalo, to everyone out there. He seems to be back in form with his running mate, Kale Iro, back in the team in the centres with Jesse, Rami and Noodles. The 5'8" is Braden Trindle, and Nicho Hynes, the former Storm player, is the halfback. In the front row, we've got Aiden Fanua-Blake and Oregon Kaufusi listed in jersey number 10. However, Oregon Kaufusi has not been starting of late, but Tom Hazleton's out, so maybe he will. Iron Man Blake Brayley, who typically plays 80 minutes, is the hooker. And then the back row of Britton Nickera, Billy Burns, and the captain, Cam McInnes, with a bench of Daniel Atkinson, Jesse Colquhoun, Sifa Murderagai Talakai, and Braden the Rock Hamlin Ueli. The coach is Craig Fitzgibbon. That is the Sharkies team. We have got a lot of players injured at the moment. So we did an episode yesterday, that's just published we have a physio expert, ex-Shark physio, Francis Crossley, comes in. Yeah, we're missing a winger. We're missing a couple of front rowers. We're missing, a couple of forwards. Teague Wilton might be back this week in the back row. Billy Burns has been filling in. But with Jesse Colquhoun and Talakai, that's two not necessarily always middle forwards on the bench. I like the Sharks to have, the big boppers of Toby Rudolph and Tom Hazleton coming off the bench. So wouldn't surprise me if there was a change, and we've got a guy called we call him Tukes coming off the bench. He gives us a bit of size as well. So the Sharkies were in pretty good form. We seem to just drop our bundle sometimes. And this team's good enough that I think we're definitely going to make the playoffs. It's almost like we're waiting for the playoffs already. So we're going to be pretty pumped up to play your Melbourne Storm team, Daniel. Any areas you want me to focus on? What scares you about the Sharkies?
I think the forward pack, obviously menacing, even with the outs like Big Tommy Hazleton and co, Teague Wilton. Billy Burns, what he's been able to do, especially over the last fortnight, outstanding. He's been absolutely brilliant on that left edge. The greatest ball running back rower, Britton Nickera, scares the hell out of me.
He's so good, Britton Nickera.
No one runs a better line. No one runs a better line than Britton Nickera. He's the best line running edge back rower in the game. And I say that as a Storm fan and member who has unabashed a love affair with Eli Katoa and Sean Bloor, but I can completely say, hand on heart, Britton Nickera is an absolute demon when he runs those courage lines. He cuts those unders lines straight back into the ruck, and always comes up trumps with usually a meat pie. But look, it is the forward pack. The forward pack obviously is dangerous. I'm a big fan of Jesse Colquhoun. A lot of probably not well known by most rugby league fans, but I've watched his career very, very closely. Have really, I suppose, very similar to Cade Dykes, really heartbreaks for these guys that unfortunately been cut down over the last couple of years through constant injury. He's one of them. So really good.
He had the non-contact injury, didn't he? He had the non-contact, just running along and just got struck down there. They just seem to be the worst, because that means that it was inevitably going to happen anyway. And so he's been coming back into the team. His decision-making a couple of weeks ago, he was sin-binned when he probably didn't need to be. He's just learning and reminding himself about how to play. But he's not as big as Tom Hazleton or Rudolph by any means, but he's a pretty handy player. Would he make our strongest 17? Jesse Colquhoun would be close. I'd think Rudolph or Tom Hazleton would probably have him covered, but he might be able to push out Daniel Atkinson. The return of Siosifa Talakai has also been a big question mark for the Sharkies. So Talakai was playing in the centres for a while, for a couple of years, and it was pushed out of the team by Kale Iro. And they also changed in last year's off season prior to 2024. They bulked Sifa Talakai up so that he could play in the middle forwards, and then they had the centre injury, and then they put him back in the centres. And I swear our podcast spent every single week talking about, well, is Talakai a centre or not? It was like the ongoing discussion. What's a little bit frustrating for Sharks fans now is that Talakai's only getting 22, 25 minutes. But boy, those 25 minutes are just brutal for the opposition teams.
Yeah.
And so despite him only playing 25 minutes, he frequently features in our 3-2-1s. And maybe, look, we've got a bit of a cult hero status for Siosifa Talakai. But he's just been absolutely brilliant form for us when he's, the other week he only played 30 seconds though. So it's good to see him back. Look, the most talked about Shark is without a doubt Nicho. And you guys would obviously be very familiar with Nicho Hynes. It just does my head in, the media's treatment of Nicho Hynes, mate. Like all this, he's down on confidence, and he's the fifth best halfback in the NRL and probably in the top 10 players, a former Daily M winner at worst. He is an absolute elite level player, and he's been absolutely brilliant the last couple of weeks. So Nick and points, probably the worst thing that could happen for Will Kennedy's Daily M credentials this season is the last couple of weeks of Nicho Hynes, because he jagged the 6 points last week. He's that injury that he had at the end of last season. He wasn't right at the end of the finals, and he wasn't even right at the start of the season. So I think we're going to start to see the best of him. What's your take on Nicho, mate? You guys would have a positive feelings toward Nicho, I would have thought.
Storm fans and members love Nicho Hynes. What he did for us, debuting in 2019, obviously was a part of the wider squad in 2020 when the Storm won the premiership, filling in admirably for Ryan Papenhuyzen in 21 after Pappy was sidelined with concussion after sustaining the nasty head knock when Tyrell Fuimaono almost decapitated him at Magic Round. So that's when Nicho really, I suppose, put himself in the shop front window in that regard. Look, he's a natural ball runner. He's not a game manager. He's not an organizer. When he's at his dangerous best, it's when he's running the ball and he thinks run first, rather than trying to, I suppose, complicate himself in terms of trying to get to other points in the field, making sure everyone's doing else their roles. If he just basically has the mindset, I'm just going to run today, then he plays his best football. And two things, I suppose, something that I picked up, especially over the past fortnight, I've never seen him play more direct.
Yeah, he's
so
been good.
When he's actually going to the line, yeah. So something that I've noticed the way the Sharks attack, they play with a fan shape. So compared to, and what I mean by fan shape for those that are listening and watching, is that instead of your standard shape of block play out the back to a jockey sweep of a fullback, the Sharks sort of play with this sort of sliding shape where they're not necessarily always running block runners, but they've got players that are cutting in underneath, etc., and they sort of slide. They slide with their attack, and that's what's referred to as a fan shape. And sometimes it is effective, but other times, if you've got a defensive system that is up and in or up and out, that can actually corral you to the sideline. And one thing where Nicho plays his best football is when he runs direct. If he gets that tendency to start running and crabbing across field, it actually nullifies his game, and it actually hurts the Sharks' attack. So when he's actually playing over the ad line, and benefits of basically grabbing that ball and just playing straight direct, all of a sudden, that opens up everyone else. And we've seen the beneficiary. There was that beautiful ball against the Eels he threw on for KL Iro, Champagne Rugby League. Even the try to Nicho the other week.
It's a different assignment. It's a different assignment playing your mob, to your point of your strength of your defence.
See, yeah, well, put it this way, like halves need to be on the front foot to dominate. So as long as the forward pack is laying him and giving him time and space to be able to run, then he'll come into his own. If they fail on that assignment, and all of a sudden, similar to what happened with the Bulldogs earlier this year, that's just the bread and butter of rugby league, right? Where if you can get your line speed right and just put relentless pressure and cut down time and be able to, I suppose, match the Sharks in the middle, then all of a sudden that really hampers and hurts Nicho. He's at his best when all of a sudden the Sharks are rolling downfield with ease and he's just got time. And if he's got time, he's running because he's got time, he's got space, he's got a retreating defensive line, which brings him in as well. So
yeah, and then it brings in his passing game and his running game, and then he can find his outside guys. And he's got Nicho to Britain Nikora as one of our favourite ways to score tries. Oh, that's for sure.
Brilliant.
Now, the other Sharks player that is in look, we did a player tiers this week, and William Kennedy is, without a doubt, the form Sharks player. One of the boys on our podcast, Lat, says that players often play better when they're on the contract years. Will Kennedy is on a contract year. Do you buy into that thinking on contract years? Do you think that's motivating him a little bit?
Potentially, I don't always subscribe to it. I know my best friend Jack, she'll be listening to this. She subscribes to that theory, not just with Will Kennedy, but all Sharks players that have traditionally come off contract at that period of time. But
Royce Hunt last year's season was great for the Sharks. When he was on, he was good too.
Yeah. Look, I don't always.
It's why people don't like the 7-year contracts, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes they get comfortable, etc. You know what I mean? But look, I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think it's more along the lines of that he's arrived as a player now. Like he's over 100 games. Usually, you find that sort of confidence when you're 5 or 6 seasons
approaching
into
200
a career.
games, Will Kennedy.
Yeah, well, there you go. So you start to understand your game a lot more, and I suppose you understand your role within the team as well. Like everyone can play rugby league, right? But it's understanding how you fit and that time within that sort of team and that system where you become really, really comfortable with it. So, and I think Will Kennedy's probably that time in his life cycle of his career where he's now at that real purple patch.
Oh, fingers crossed Will Kennedy can keep it going for the Daily M. I wasn't that confident at the start, but now he's certainly in the mix. But there's a bit of luck with the Daily M's and also with your fellow team members not having the strongest matches but still being able to support you. Certainly Fanua Blake's not taking too many points off him, which I thought he might, but Nicho certainly has the potential to. Other Sharks players that I'll just highlight, Ronaldo Mulitalo might be he's got to be the pest of the Sharks that all the other opposition fans, the Sharks fans, we can't stand. Mitchell Moses is the one, is probably the captain of our, oh, goodness me, the whinger, Mitchell Moses. Yeah, Ronnie, where does he sit on your list of top 10 annoying players in the NRL for the other teams, Daniel? Is he top 5, top 2? Where is he?
I'm a big fan.
Good.
Probably. Yeah, no. I love him. I love watching him. I know he's the antagonist. Yeah, I know he's the public enemy number 1. But no, look, I think he definitely adds a dimension to the Sharks. He's almost the barometer. Is that if he's up and about, that usually dictates that Cronulla are on today because he's running his mouth and giving it to fans and geeing guys up. And no, look, I think he's a tremendous player, a great finisher, great in terms of being able to. Yeah, he can score a try. And I think one thing that probably doesn't get or gets slept on by a lot of opposition fans because they love to hate him, but what he does in terms of being able to start your set so well
Oh,
in
so
terms
well.
of
Him and
kick
Katoa.
return.
I'm missing Katoa.
Brilliant.
Stone Street's
Absolutely
good.
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Stone Street's good.
Yep.
He's fast.
And I like it.
But yeah, the way that the wingers, I always say this for the Sharks in the playoffs last is like, who are the best players for the Sharks compared to all the other teams? And it's definitely the wingers. So Ronnie is certainly that. All right, sweet. So other than that, a couple of other questions. Well, I'll get your tip as we round out the preview. I'll get your tip and then we'll just talk a couple other general things. Tell us why the Storm are winning. Come on.
I hope it's not Golden Point because I don't think the blood pressure and the heart could take it. But look, if again wet weather is potentially going to play a factor here as well, and hopefully the Storm have learned from their round 4 loss to the Dragons, where it was absolutely monsoonal and Noah was building an arc. But look, if the Storm are to win, it's meeting fire with fire. It has to be one through the middle. So being able to stop the Sharks in the middle and really lay a platform and build that momentum, and obviously Harry Grant to play on the back of some good go forward. That's where I think the game definitely can be won, because obviously that'll bring in their creatives in their 1, 6, 7, and 9 to really do their thing. So that's where I think the game can be won. And I suppose conversely, that's where the game can be lost. If the Storm don't aim up and the Sharks can get over the top of them, well, it's going to bring that man in Nicho Hynes to really come into his own in that regard. And wouldn't he love to get one over his former team? So
he would love to get one over.
The
Sharkies against the Storm. We don't have the best record, but we got an all right record recently at Shark Park. So having one in 2022?
2022, I think was the last time. Yeah,
and then we didn't play there during COVID. And then we won in 2019, 28 points to 18. So what's your score prediction? Come on, mate. Put it on the line.
I'll say Storm by 4. Storm by 4.
Storm by 4. All right. Well, I'm gonna echo your picks there. It'll come down to the discipline of the Sharks. And if the Sharks can be disciplined and go with the Storm for that long, then we might just be able to catch up. But the problem with trying to beat the Storm is just your relentless discipline. And so the Sharkies are well known for not being that disciplined and getting a little funny and nervous in spots. So it's going to be a tough night out for the Sharkies. But down at the Bermuda Triangle of Shark Park, you never know what might happen. All right, so some fun other things that I often do on these opposition fan previews. I think this question, there's an undeniable answer to this. I always ask the opposition fans, who's the best player who's played for both teams? And I think we asked Ryan Hoffman this question and talked about it, and the clear answer, I started saying to wear a Nicho at first, but then actually clearly the answer is Brett Kimmorley, isn't it?
I'll raise your Brett Kimmorley and say Will Chambers.
Oh, it's definitely not Will Chambers. Well, the way that I also put it, the way to ask the question is you've got to have had good stints for both clubs. So if the criteria, and I know you love the criteria, late 1990s rugby league fan that you are, if the criteria is you've got to have been good for both teams, then it's hard to argue that it's Morley and then probably to wear.
Oh, it's Noddy. It's Noddy for sure. Yeah, no, it's Noddy for sure. I think Nicho is important for culture.
Yep.
Look, if I can be frank and honest, the flat style of attack gave me the absolute Edgar Brits. Absolutely could not stand the Chris Anderson.
What about a Noddy Kimmorley inside ball settler? What about an inside ball settler from Noddy? Did that do your head in like it did our head in? Goodness me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So to this day, I still don't know how he kept Andrew Johns out of the 7 jersey, but that's a discussion for another podcast.
It's remarkable that he did that. Like that would be like Mitchell Moses coming in and unseating Nathan Cleary at halfback. Like even more shocking than that. Like
Cleary to hooker.
Let's move Cleary to hooker or bloody fullback or something. Like it is astounding that actually when you put it in that perspective, it is astounding that even happened. Robbie Kearns is obviously another one. He had a heralded career with the Storm, having started with the Sharkies. They're probably the most notable ones. Have you got any others you can think of?
Yep.
Who was that?
I said he had a stint over at Perth as well. So on his
Did he have a stint at Perth,
to Melbourne, Robbie Kearns?
Yeah, that's right. He did
before he.
That's right. Before he. Yep. Yeah, in between. That's right. In between us, that's where he went. Yeah, right. Got it. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you. We did an interview with Ryan Hoffman. I am very passionate on this subject, so we get along very well, you and I. The salary cap. How many premierships of this do you think the Storm have won? And if you were the executive producer of Fox League, when Cooper Cronk's little thing comes up down the bottom, how many premierships would you say Cooper Cronk's won?
I told you I was going to give you a political answer, so I'm going to give you a political answer.
Yep.
I believe the Storm have won 4 premierships. So 99, 2012, 2017, 2020. Mm-hmm. However, I believe they've won 6 grand finals.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't deny that it happened.
So,
as Ryan Hoffman said in the video with us, it was a terrific interview. So, for those that may not know the story, Ryan Hoffman did an interview with one of the rugby league podcasts, and I say we as in the ET Stand Instagram channel. It was me that went and commented and said, "Nah, you didn't win." And then Hoffman and I had a bit of a bargy on the socials, and I invited him to come on the podcast. And credit to him, he came on and he was an absolute freaking legend, Ryan Hoffman. I got to admit, certainly he advanced his position as standing with me, and he was prepared to have a conversation and take me on. The thing that bugs the rest of the NRL fans is the way the Storm parade the premierships around as if they won.
Yeah.
And it's freaking annoying. And the point that and Gallup made the point at the time is that you got a whole bunch of benefits by being able to keep players. And so, we didn't go and sign anyone. It's like, well, you did get to keep a whole bunch of players, and your squad retention and that continuity certainly helped. And my best mate, he's an Eels fan, as the saying goes. It's well, it wasn't a level playing field on that day of the Eels versus the Storm. And it's really bloody annoying that we'll never know if a salary cap fair Storm team would have beaten the Jared Hayne Eels team. We're never going to know that. And it's a bit of a shame for rugby league. And it's a bit of a thing that's, sweeping it under the carpet and saying, we won 6. We got to never let that salary cap stuff happen with any of the teams again, because it's, there were a whole bunch of unfair advantages. But when you listen to Hoffman, mate, and if you haven't listened to it, goodness me, I didn't have, going into that interview, I didn't have much sympathy for the players, but having gone through that journey, I do have sympathy for them, because that would freaking suck. But absolutely, there's an argument to be made you should have known. Like, I don't know. It's a tough one, isn't it? What's your take on it?
It is a tough one, because I don't know if any of your listeners or viewers have read Paul Kennedy's Stormcloud book, which goes into depth with the salary cap. And categorically, the players did not know. So anyone who knows anything, like I used to work in rugby league, and when it comes to contracts, players sign 3 contracts, right? So it's 3 of the same contracts. One goes to the NRL, one the club keeps, and one the player and their manager keep. Usually goes to the manager. So a player can sit there and read through one contract, and then all of a sudden sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, and all the rest of the contracts. Little did they know, or little did they know at that period of time, the contract they were signing, they thought was going to the NRL, which wasn't.
Which it wasn't.
That's what I mean. So whatever was agreed between them and the club, it was absolutely
pretty brutal for them.
The forensic investigation.
But the problem is that then but Parramatta Eels were denied a fair chance in the grand final against Melbourne Storm because your officials did that. And so whether or not you can say, like, they were denied that chance. And so I was like, the knife to a gunfight, unfortunately, and so it's just a blight on the damn game.
Well, as someone who is not an unabashed Eels fan, I think we did rugby league a great service by denying them a premiership. And
well, the Eels fans are so pleased, Daniel, because you know what's happened with the confirmation of the Perth Bears. That means that the longest premiership drought is no longer the Parramatta Eels. Congratulations, Eels fans.
There you go. Well, that's divisive too. That's divisive too, because in my mind, it's not North Sydney Bears history. It's a completely new entity in its entirety. So
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Obviously, they're going to carry the colours of the Bears.
They're surrendering their IP, but it's not their history. It's not their records. It's not going to have their continuation of first grade longevity. It'll be Bears in name and look, but it's actually not going to be a continuation.
It's not the North Sydney Bears. It's something else.
And it's not relocation.
Yeah, it's something else.
That's just the facts. That's just the facts. Otherwise,
it's not like they've. Yeah, that's true. I still think it's a good idea to call them the Bears.
It would be like saying that St. Merge is still St. George when it's not. It's completely new.
Yeah, it's not. St. George won 16 premierships. St. George Illawarra have won
one. Exactly.
Illawarra have won one.
There's the Unity ticket. There's the Unity ticket we're on. So
yeah, well, that's true.
Fun fact. In 2010, if the Storm were allowed to play for points, they would have amassed enough points to finish fifth, and they potentially could have denied St. George Illawarra.
We know that. That was, Daniel, that's the other thing we say. There's your bloody salary cap, buddy, damn it. If it wasn't for you, that's the other problem with it, is that, and also, given that you didn't play for points, there's a whole bunch of points that you might have gotten as well. So I don't think your team was the fifth best team that season. I think they premiership finish, they might have been in the top couple. We'll never know, is just a bit of a bummer as well.
All fish and chip paper.
Oh, well, never mind. All right, mate. Well, it's good to have you in. You're an absolute terrific legend. We should get you in for a show in the off season as well, just chatting all things. It's so good to just chat rugby league with rugby league aficionados. Where are you watching the game from, mate?
Hopefully be there. So I'm waiting to hear from my friend Jack, who's got tickets in the she's a member, and she's got seats in the Andrew Eddinghausen stand. So I'm waiting on bated breath to hopefully attend.
Is she lower or upper?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure she's upper this year. I know previously she's been lower. So
good vantage point.
Yeah, very much so. But look, round 17, we do clash again. So let's try and tee up.
We'll do it again.
Podcast,
yeah, right. Absolutely. Sounds good. We'll do it again. All right, perfect. We'll do that one. You know what? We can do that one. We'll do it with your purple layout rather than the Cronulla Sharks blue that I've forced you to go through. All right. Well, that was our opposition fan preview. That was the longest one of these we've ever done, mate. So congratulations. It was certainly educating and good fun. So no, that was absolutely terrific. So we'll the Sharkies take on the Melbourne Storm 7:30 p.m. or 7:35 p.m. really at Sharks Stadium. We'll be live post show with what we call the debrief. It will be Lats and Chris Kelly hosting a debrief, co-hosting together. So Stormy, normally it's either Franco or me on our channel that hosts the debrief. And so we're letting the two reprobates have their own shot at hosting the show. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. So that could be fun. I think I'll dial in and try and keep them on their toes. So, mate, how can people hear your podcast? What's the best way to tune into Stormcast?
Yep. So if they jump onto Spotify or Apple Podcasts, all they've got to do is search Stormcast Podcast, and it'll be there on Apple. And
you've also got an Spotify. Instagram channel as well. Also give them a follow on Instagram.
So if they jump on Instagram or Twitter or X, just type in Stormcast Podcast, and you'll see me, as well as on Facebook as well. So right across the social realm.
Sounds good. All right, mate. Well, good luck. Hopefully we're not talking about the referee, but you don't like to talk about the referees anyway, so there's no way we'll be doing that. We'll all right. Well, good luck to the Storm. Good luck to the Sharks, and we'll see you guys next time. That was the Opposition Fan Preview on the ET Stand Podcast.
For over 50 years, people have come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite-level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated. More often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the E.T. Stand Podcast.